My name is Maya Chen and I'm 29 years old. For the last decade, I've kept a leather-bound journal in a locked drawer in my home office. Every Sunday night after dinner with my in-laws, I would come home, pour a glass of wine, and write. Everything. Every barbed comment wrapped in sweetness. Every time my mother-in-law rearranged my kitchen cabinets to be helpful. Every moment my husband chose keeping the peace over having my back. Last month, she found it. And 2 weeks ago, she brought it to Sunday dinner. Before we dive into what happened that night, let me take you back to the beginning. Because you need to understand how I got here. How a girl who grew up in a cramped San Francisco apartment with immigrant parents who worked 3 jobs between them ended up married into the wealthy, white, Connecticut family that would spend the next 10 years trying to remake her in their image. It was the fall of 2014. I was 19, a sophomore at Yale on a full scholarship, working 2 campus jobs to afford textbooks. I met Andrew Harrison in an economics seminar. He sat 3 rows ahead of me, always prepared, always confident in that specific way that comes from never having worried about money. When he turned around one day and asked if I wanted to study together, I should have noticed the way his eyes lingered on my laptop, a 5-year-old Dell held together with duct tape, before he smiled. But I was 19, and he was beautiful, and when he laughed at my jokes about supply and demand curves, something in my chest went warm. We dated through college. Andrew was attentive, generous, introduced me to a world I'd only ever seen in movies. Weekend trips to his family's house in Greenwich. Dinners at restaurants where the menus didn't have prices. His parents, Richard and Catherine Harrison, were polite when we first met. Polite the way people are when they are trying very hard not to say what they are actually thinking. I remember the first dinner at their house. Catherine, never Kathy, never Mom, always Catherine, had set the table with china that probably cost more than my parents' car. She'd made what she called authentic Chinese food in my honor. It was Panda Express-level orange chicken. Andrew squeezed my hand under the table when I thanked her, his way of saying, "Just go with it." That became our pattern. Just go with it, Maya. They mean well, Maya. It's not worth the fight, Maya. I went with it for 10 years. We got married the summer after graduation. My parents flew in from San Francisco, stayed at a Holiday Inn because Catherine's guest rooms were being renovated. They weren't. I knew because I saw Catherine's sister staying in one of them the night before the wedding. The wedding itself was beautiful. Catherine planned most of it. My mother wanted me to wear a traditional chipo for the tea ceremony. Catherine insisted, really, that we keep things simple and elegant with just the American ceremony. No need to confuse the guests, she'd said, touching my arm in that way she had. Gentle pressure that somehow felt like a threat. Andrew said it was my choice. Then he mentioned how much his grandmother would have appreciated a traditional ceremony. His very elderly, very conservative grandmother who controlled the family trust. I wore the white dress. The journal started 3 months after the wedding. A gift from my college roommate, Lauren, with a note, for all the things you can't say out loud. She knew. Even then, she knew. The first entry was November 15th, 2015. Sunday dinner. Catherine rearranged my spice cabinet while I was at work. Said my system was inefficient. Andrew thinks I'm overreacting. Maybe I am. Maybe this is what family does. The entries got longer, more detailed. By year 2, I was filling pages. Catherine has a key to our house. She let herself in today while we were both at work and left a note on the counter. Noticed you were low on proper cleaning supplies. I took the liberty. She replaced all my products with the expensive organic ones she uses. When I told Andrew I felt violated, he said I should be grateful she cares so much. By year 5, I was documenting everything with the precision of someone building a case. Today's comments from Catherine, "That dress is so brave, Maya. I could never wear something so tight." Andrew, darling, your skin looks dry. Maya, are you moisturizing him? I told the Hendersons we can't make it to their fundraiser. I know you two are so busy with work. No need to thank me. The journal became my witness. The one place where I could name what was happening. Because Andrew wouldn't. Every time I tried to talk to him about his mother's behavior, he had an explanation. She's from a different generation. She's just trying to help. You're too sensitive. She loves you like a daughter. If this is how she treats daughters, I wrote in year 7, I'm grateful I never gave her grandchildren. That entry was particularly detailed. About the month Catherine spent leaving parenting books on our coffee table. About the OBGYN she'd made an appointment with just in case you wanted to talk to someone about family planning. About Andrew saying she just wants us to be happy, as if his mother's vision of our happiness was the only one that mattered. I never let Andrew read the journal. It was mine, the only thing in our marriage that was completely, entirely mine. I kept it locked in my desk drawer. The key stayed on my keychain, always with me, until the day I forgot it. October 23rd. I was running late for a meeting, grabbed my work bag, and rushed out the door. My keychain was on the kitchen counter. I realized it 10 minutes into my commute, but I had back-to-back meetings until 6 p.m. I'd get it when I got home. Andrew texted me at 2:30. Mom stopped by. She wanted to drop off some recipes for Thanksgiving. I felt ice in my stomach but told myself I was being paranoid. The drawer was locked. The key was in the kitchen. There was no way. When I got home at 7, Andrew was in the living room. His face was strange. Not angry. Just careful. "We need to talk," he said. "About what?" "My mother called. She was pretty upset." The ice spread through my entire body. Why was she upset? He looked at his hands. "She said she was looking for stamps in your desk and, Maya, did you really write all those things about her?" I couldn't breathe. "She broke into my locked drawer." "She didn't break in. She said the lock was faulty and it just..." "Andrew." My voice came out harder than I'd ever spoken to him. "That drawer has been locked for 10 years. The lock wasn't faulty. She picked it, or broke it, and then she read my private journal. She's very hurt, Maya. Some of the things you wrote were private, in my private journal, that she had no right to read." He stood up, ran his hands through his hair. The gesture he always made when he was about to choose her. "I know it was wrong of her to read it. I do. But Maya, some of those things. Passive-aggressive tyrant. Emotional blackmail. That's my mother you're talking about. In my private journal. She's family. So am I." He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. And maybe I had. Because in 10 years of marriage, I'd never actually demanded to be chosen. I'd always just gone with it. Not this time. "Where's the journal now?" I asked. "She has it." The room tilted. "She took it." "Maya," she was crying. She said she needed time to process. "She stole my journal. She broke into my desk, read my private thoughts, and then stole my property. And you let her?" I told her to give it back tomorrow at Sunday dinner. We can all talk about this like adults. Sunday dinner. Of course. Catherine Harrison's favorite stage. I looked at my husband. Really looked at him. At the man I'd been making excuses for, adapting myself for, shrinking myself for. "What did you tell her?" I asked quietly. "What do you mean?" "When she called crying, what did you say to her?" He shifted his weight. "I told her you've been under a lot of stress, that you probably didn't mean those things the way they sounded, that we'd work it out." It was 10 years of marriage in one sentence. "You probably didn't mean it. We'll work it out." I went upstairs to my office, our office, though Andrew never used it, and sat at my desk. The drawer hung open, lock mechanism clearly forced. She'd used something, probably a letter opener. Scratches marked the wood around the lock. I pulled out my laptop and started typing. Not in anger, not in hurt, in absolute, crystalline clarity. Because here's the thing about keeping a journal for 10 years, you start to see patterns. And I'd spent the last decade documenting every single one. Sunday dinner was at 6 p.m. The whole family would be there. Richard and Catherine. Andrew's sister Jennifer and her husband Mark. Andrew's brother Christopher and his wife Danielle. The perfect family gathering. I arrived at 6:15. Fashionably late, Catherine would call it. Disrespectful, she'd think. Everyone was in the living room. Drinks had been poured. Catherine had positioned herself in the center of the sofa, my journal on the coffee table in front of her, like evidence at a trial. "Maya," she said, standing. "I'm glad you're here. I think we need to have a very honest conversation about some deeply hurtful things." I set my purse down, pulled out my phone, and opened the Notes app. "I agree. I have some things I'd like to discuss too." Andrew touched my elbow. "Maya, maybe we should." "Sit down, Andrew." He blinked. I'd never used that tone with him. I'd never used that tone with anyone in this family. I looked at Catherine. Before we discuss my private journal that you broke into my home office to steal, I'd like to ask you some questions. Would that be all right? Her smile was tight. Of course, Dee. Why did you break the lock on my desk drawer? I didn't break. The lock was faulty. It opened when I tried it. The lock that's been working perfectly for 10 years suddenly malfunctioned the one day I forgot my keys at home. Silence. I scrolled on my phone. Here's what I find interesting. In the journal you stole, I documented every boundary violation over the last 10 years. There are 347 entries. Would you like to hear some of them? Maya, Richard said, warning in his voice. I don't think. Entry from March 2016. Catherine let herself into our house while we were on our honeymoon and reorganized our bedroom. She threw away my grandmother's quilt because it didn't match the aesthetic. I found it later in her garage. Entry from July 2017. Catherine told my mother that Americans prefer handshakes over hugs when greeting. My mother stopped hugging me at family gatherings for 2 years. Entry from December 2019. Catherine scheduled a therapy appointment for me without my knowledge and told the therapist I had anger management issues. I only found out when the office called to confirm. I looked up. Catherine's face had gone pale. Jennifer was staring at her mother. Should I continue? I have 344 more. This is outrageous, Catherine whispered. I did those things out of love. To help you. To make you part of this family. By breaking into my private space. By reading my personal thoughts. By stealing my property. I didn't steal. I was going to give it back. When? After you made copies? After you showed Andrew? After you planned this intervention? Her silence was confirmation. I turned to Andrew. Do you know what the last entry in that journal says? He shook his head, looking miserable. It's dated 6 months ago. It says, I can't do this anymore. I've spent 10 years trying to be the daughter-in-law Catherine wants, the wife Andrew needs. I've stayed quiet, made excuses, bent myself into shapes that don't fit me. I've let her into my home, my marriage, my life, and I've lost myself completely. It ends now. I'm giving this marriage until the end of the year. If nothing changes, I'm leaving. Not in anger, not in hurt, in self-preservation. Andrew stood up. Maya. I filed for divorce 2 weeks ago, I said calmly. The papers are being served to you tomorrow. I'm moving out on Friday. I've already found an apartment in New Haven. I've already consulted with a lawyer. I've already started therapy with someone Catherine didn't choose for me. The room erupted. Catherine was talking. Andrew was trying to get to me. Jennifer was asking questions. But I heard it all from a distance, like I was underwater. The only reason I came tonight, I continued, raising my voice, was to tell you all in person. Because despite everything, you are my family. We're my family. And I thought you deserved to know why. I picked up my journal from the coffee table. This belongs to me. You had no right to read it. No right to take it. No right to use my private pain as ammunition. I looked at Andrew. Really looked at him. I loved you. I really did. But you love your mother's comfort more than my dignity. And I can't compete with that anymore. I won't. Catherine found her voice. You're throwing away 10 years of marriage over a journal. No, I said. I'm leaving a marriage where my husband lets his mother break into my office, violate my privacy, and then asks me to apologize for her feelings. There's a difference. I walked to the door, turned back one last time. For anyone wondering, I didn't write those things to hurt you. I wrote them because I needed to survive you. And the fact that reading my honest feelings hurt you more than your actions hurt me tells you everything you need to know about this family. Lauren was waiting outside in her car, like we'd planned. I got in, handed her the journal, and started crying. Not sad crying. The kind of crying that happens when you've been holding your breath for a decade and finally let it out. You did it, she said, squeezing my hand. I did it. My phone started ringing. Andrew, Catherine, Jennifer, Christopher. I turned it off. That was 3 weeks ago. The divorce is proceeding. Andrew hired his family's lawyer. I hired mine, a woman named Patricia Chen, no relation, who specializes in cases where one party has been systematically financially isolated by their spouse's family. Turns out, there's a lot of documentation in my journal about that too. Andrew called once from a number I didn't recognize. I answered, This isn't you, Maya. This isn't who you are. You're right, I said. The person I was would have stayed, would have apologized, would have made myself smaller until I disappeared. But I'm not that person anymore. My mother's in therapy. She's devastated. I hope it helps her. We could try counseling. We could. Andrew, in 10 years, you never once asked me if I was okay. You just assumed I would keep going with it. So no, we're not trying counseling. I'm moving forward, alone. I hung up. My parents flew in last weekend. We sat in my new apartment, a one-bedroom in New Haven with good light and a door Catherine doesn't have a key to, and I showed them the journal. My mother cried. My father, who rarely shows emotion, stood up and hugged me for a long time. You were protecting us, my mother said in Mandarin. You didn't want us to know how they treated you. I thought I was protecting my marriage. You were protecting everyone but yourself, my father said. No more. No more. I'm writing this from my office, my real office now, at a nonprofit where I work with immigrant families navigating the American legal system. The leather journal sits on my desk, not locked away. I don't write in it anymore. I don't need to. Yesterday, I got a letter. From Catherine. Not a text, not an email. A real letter, handwritten. I almost threw it away. But Lauren said, at least read it. Then you can throw it away. It was 6 pages. 6 pages of justifications, explanations, and exactly 3 sentences that mattered. I read your journal because I was terrified of losing Andrew to you. I see now that my fear made me cruel. I'm sorry. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But maybe it's a start for her. Not for me. I don't need her apology to move forward. I'm sitting in a coffee shop in New Haven right now, writing this on my laptop. The barista just brought me a refill without me asking. The woman at the next table smiled at me. Small things. Human things. Things I forgot to notice when I was busy managing Catherine's feelings and Andrew's comfort and everyone's peace except my own. If you're reading this and you see yourself in my story, if you have a journal full of things you can't say out loud, if you're going with it to keep the peace, if you're making yourself smaller to fit into someone else's vision of who you should be, I want you to know something. The journal isn't the problem. The fact that you need one is. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. You don't have to be grateful for mistreatment wrapped in good intentions. You don't have to explain yourself to people who refuse to listen. And you don't have to wait for them to change. You can just leave. Last week, I had coffee with Lauren and 3 other women from a support group I joined. One of them asked, "Do you regret the 10 years?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said. Because those 10 years taught me exactly who I am. And more importantly, who I'm not. I'm not the woman who stays quiet. I'm not the woman who apologizes for taking up space. I'm not the woman who needs permission to protect herself. I'm Maya Chen. I'm 29 years old. And I'm finally, completely, unapologetically myself. The journal that was supposed to destroy me ended up saving me. Because when Catherine Harrison opened it expecting to find ammunition to shame me, she found something else instead. She found the truth. And the truth, as it turns out, was exactly what I needed to set myself free. My new apartment has a balcony. I sit out there sometimes, drinking tea my mother sent me, writing in a new journal. Not documentation this time. Just thoughts, dreams, plans for a future that belongs entirely to me. Last entry. Today I didn't think about Andrew once until 8 p.m. Progress. Tomorrow I'll try for 9. If you've made it this far, thank you for reading. If this resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, leave me a comment. Tell me, what would you have done? Would you have stayed? Would you have left sooner? And if you're keeping your own secret journal, maybe it's time to ask yourself why. Not to stop writing, but to start speaking. Your truth deserves to be heard, even if it's just by you, especially by you. I'll see you next time.